Hello, I'm Jonasz Lewiński and you're watching Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. So, guess what? Apparently Europe might not get a seat at the negotiating table when it comes to peace in Ukraine after all. Trump's special envoy, Keith Kellogg, made this abundantly clear, saying essentially that, look, you had your shot with the Minsk talks all the way back, there was way too many of you. It was a mess, and we don't want that. Time for a quote. It may be like chalk on a blackboard. It may grate a little bit, but I am telling you something that is really quite honest. End of quote. And actually, chalk on the blackboard might well be the tagline for the entire Munich Security Conference this year. I mean, J.D. Vance dragging European allies through the mud over freedom of speech was literally chalk on the blackboard, played through Metallica's most absurdly overpowered sound system ever. But all this is actually way more complicated than that. For one, we don't even know if Europe will be excluded. Later on, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio seemed to directly contradict Kellogg, which was by no means the only time when the Trump team contradicted itself on a major point. Still, the good, the bad, and the ugly of this story are as follows. The good. Europe is invited to make its contributions in the process, so it will not be completely sidelined. Frankly, the whole Minsk reference also makes a lot of sense. It was a failure, and besides, if you want a streamlined process, having a bunch of countries jostling for position without a unified front isn't exactly the most efficient of options. Plus, Moscow will always be happy to exploit such situations to its advantage. Divide and conquer is its game. So, dear Europe, it's unity or the door. Make your choice. The bad. Ukraine also feels like it could be left out in the cold. President Zelensky already said they haven't been invited for the nice chat between Moscow and Washington scheduled to take place in Saudi Arabia. Also, if the Trump team says Europe was unable to provide effective guarantees with Minsk too, may I suggest looking up Budapest Memorandum? Because there definitely were Western assurances there, including American ones, and of course, we all know how this ended up, right? The ugly, of course, is Russia. The Trump team is supposed to be all about carrots and sticks, but right now we seem to have a whole field of nice juicy carrots while being somewhat deficient in the sticks department. I mean, getting Russia back into the G7, Lavrov and company salivating for the prospect of maybe getting sanctions lifted. All this is not a pretty picture, and the very idea of normalizing Russia after years of wartime atrocities will, and should, rub many people the wrong way. In the end, tables in politics are a symbolic artifact, sometimes also a source of memes, like Putin's infamous massive table the size of the USS Gerald Ford, if you remember that one. But this time it's actually serious stuff. Europe must get its act together if it wants to stay relevant. Coming back to our Western reference of the day, in this world there is two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns and those who dig. And Europe has a clear choice. Get the loaded guns or get busy shoveling dirt. So, let's get this straight. Ukraine, once the noble cause of the free world, is now a giant treasure chest waiting to be looted. Allies are disappearing, but mining companies, they are circling like vultures over their fresh carcass, waiting to sink their teeth into those sweet, sweet natural resources. US Senator Lindsey Graham, never one to miss a business opportunity, now assures us that Ukraine's $3 trillion in resources make it an asset and not a burden. See? It's not about defending democracy or stopping aggression, it's about profit margins. And Donald Trump, ever the deal maker, might just convince Americans that supporting Ukraine is a financial win. Not because it is the right thing to do, of course, but because it makes economic sense. What a noble attitude, huh? But then again, if it works,
Some really sick and twisted news just coming in. According to Josh Rogan with the Washington Post, while meeting today with Ukrainian President Zelensky at the Munich Security Conference in Germany, the U.S. diplomatic delegation slid him a piece of paper to blindly sign. That piece of paper would have granted the United States 50% of Ukraine's future mineral reserves. Zelensky obviously refused to sign it, refused to sell out his country on a piece of paper slid over by the United States. Absolutely disgraceful, strong-arm tactics by the Trump administration, and this while Donald Trump cozies up to Vladimir Putin and basically tells Putin he's going to give him everything that he wants.
Yeah, strong words, but when it comes to signing stuff without reading it, or without this stuff actually providing you with the guarantees that you wanted it to have, well, President Zelensky was actually right to do so, I guess. I suppose that the negotiating process is still likely to produce many surprises along the way. Meanwhile, the Chinese are already making themselves at home. At least 10 companies are gearing up to exploit Ukrainian resources after the so-called peace deal. Factories in the occupied Donbass? Check. Equipment sales to Russia's puppet republics? Already happening. And Moscow, well, sitting back, happy to watch as long as it gets its share. So after all the grand speeches and moral posturing, is this what it comes down to? A bidding war for Ukraine's land? It turns out that the fight for freedom and sovereignty could be the world's most expensive deal. Nothing says romance like Soviet nostalgia and militarism. While the rest of the world celebrates love on the 14th of February, Russian propaganda on occupied Lugansk has decided to add a little wartime charm to the occasion. Forget roses and chocolates. How about a Stalingradka? Yes, because nothing sets the mood like a reminder of a bloody battle that took place 80 years ago.
14 февраля 1943 года Красная Армия освободила Ворошиловград от немецкого плена. Помните наши советские и православные праздники.
Дарите любимым ленинтинки и сталинтинки.
Well, at least they did share the microphone in a true collective style. Anyway, in Russia's warped reality, Valentine's Day isn't about love, it's about glorifying war. After all, why exchange heartfelt messages when you can romanticize suffering and destruction? Perhaps next year they will introduce Gulag Grams or Holodomor chocolates for that extra nostalgic touch. Meanwhile, Putin's propagandists continue to wrap their imperial ambitions in cheap Soviet aesthetics, proving once again that their only true love is war. Actually, when thinking about this, imagine the way you can do romantic stuff in Russia. Let me annex your heart like Crimea. Or wedding in 3 days. Yeah, let's not go in that direction, please. And with this, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.